Welcome, everyone! We've had 3 days of nothing, but like the resurrection of Christ, it came back with a bang. 3 big deals. We finally got something to talk about. I thought I'd have to bring Damo out of retirement because he had to sit here and us just make stuff up for an hour. Damo, how are you, my good man?
We finally have something of substance to talk about, not just what could happen. We actually can talk about things that have actually happened.
It was looking hairy, I've got to admit, by lunchtime. It had the familiar vibe of the last 2 days of the trade period. But we did have deals, and the kind of deals that open up the avenue to other deals, don't they, as well? Because there's been quite a lot of pick trades.
Or potentially closes some avenues to some deals.
It does, yeah. Well, we've got lots to discuss as you all come in. G'day to you, chat. I know you've all been excited about this. But the first deal that went through was a deal that we have covered extensively on here. They changed it, though. They did give pick 32 up, Richmond did, as opposed to the 52 we discussed, meaning Brisbane win this trade by 792 points, which roughly is pick 24. But we did explain last week and this week, you can only have as many picks as you've got players off your senior list. So it made sense for this. But this was Brisbane basically saying we can now match Levi and we can now match Sam Marshall, and we're geniuses, wasn't it?
Yeah, and probably a win-win for both sides. Gets Richmond another first-round pick, but also gets Brisbane the amount of points that they need to match for Levi Ashcroft, Sam Marshall, anyone else they want to match, really. And the next deal that we talk about probably is more for Sam Marshall than Levi Ashcroft, but they've fixed the problem of not having enough points.
To be fair to Brisbane, and I want your opinion on this, Damo, and the rest of the chat, because usually I have Let Dog here to bemoan how stupid the AFL is. But is there a part of you here that when you see this kind of trade, obviously Richmond win this deal because they get right into the good core of players. Brisbane weren't ever taking that pick because Levi Ashcroft will be gone by then. But do you not feel that Brisbane have had it way too easy to match Levi Ashcroft? Like, it's almost fallen into their lap, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And there is a flaw to the system, but this is also the system working the way it's been designed, and I'm not sure the AFL would be too upset with this.
Oh, look, it's. I'll give them this. This isn't like the deals of yore, where a top 10 pick's gone for 8 picks in the 30s. Like, this is palatable because 32's there. Do you know what I mean? Like, 32's there, so like it kind of feels like Richmond haven't given the world, and it feels like Brisbane haven't been given the world. But I did want this trade to be a little bit harder. If I'm honest, I would have loved 3 or 4 clubs to come in and drive a high bargain, but I'll give them it. I'll say it's fair.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Yeah, I just want to live in a world where these list managers hate each other. I'm going to be totally honest. Like, I want backstabbing and deceit and stuff like that. But then, as Damo correctly said, we found some picks for Sam Marshall as well. And the surprising buyers of this were my beloved Blue Boys, who paid 34 and 66, receiving a future second and pick 73. Pick 73, 0 points. So Carlton have to promote a certain Jordan Boyd this year. So 73 probably is going to be burnt to do that in the off-season. But 305 points difference here, which is roughly pick 48. Carlton, though, going hard because they fulfilled the AFL's loophole of trading a future first and a future second. They got one in. And this is probably the fairest will help you pay for a player trade I've never seen two sides win in this deal. Both sides won.
Yeah, another really good trade. So Carlton get that future second that we said that they would need to have if they wanted to be any chance of getting pick 13 or any pick that an extra pick that they wanted in the first round. Whereas Brisbane got more picks to match more bids. You know, they got the picks for Levi Ashcroft. Now they've got the picks for Sam Marshall. Tick, 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 tick for everyone.
It's a green tick, and obviously this all happened in the space of like 3 minutes. Like, it was fascinating. Funny story, a Brisbane fan of mine did text me and say, can you do a video of like what would that look like if we were in debt? And I was halfway through the prep when Brisbane got out of debt, which was nice. And then just as I was offloading that and going, right, let's explain how well they've done, Carlton sprung the shock. And this has got massive ramifications around the AFL. Damo at the top of the show said, some trades may never go through now. This is the never trade. Carlton sending a future first and their second, not Brisbane's, Carlton second, receiving pick 14 for the Hawks, which this morning was reported was being used in the Barras deal. This is a pretty fair trade, as you can see, 168. Everyone's even. So anything below 200 is pretty much break even. Carlton now doing what Nick Austin said, 2 picks inside 20. Leaving the Barras deal up in air. What do we think of that, chat? Damo, what do you think of it?
I mean, does the move actually benefit Hawthorn though? Because they need to land Barras. Barras can't go back to West Coast with how far down the road this has gone. It would be awkward for him to say everything he said in his request for a trade and then have to walk through the doors at West Coast again. That would be just a little bit awkward. So Hawthorn obviously have some confidence that they can get this deal done still with those picks that Carlton have sent over. Maybe it's 2 future firsts that end up going to West Coast for Barras, but they've definitely put themselves in an interesting position. And then now West Coast, because they're not getting pick 14, what happens with Liam Baker?
Well, it's fascinating because Tom Morris this morning reported that West Coast had been offered pick 14 and a future second with a future third coming back. And that helped Eagles out because 14 was on its way to Richmond, right? Now, Ken's in chat, big Hawthorn boy. I was thinking this morning when they got rid of it, I kind of like it because now the asking price changes, but looking at it now it's being done, did it change things with Sam Frost's back-end season? Did it change things with Josh Battle coming in without giving pick swaps? Did something maybe change that maybe Hawthorn value him less and want to give the future? And as we know, we're Carlton fans. Sad, it happened with Chera. While you've got that pick in your pocket, the asking price is always going to be that pick. Hawthorn were like, right, screw it, let's get it out of the way.
Yeah, take it off the table and then let's see what happens. And I mean, Tom Barras has had back issues. He's had osteitis pubis issues over the last few years. Maybe he had a medical with the Hawks and it didn't produce favorable results. And now West Coast want to cash in because he's a key defender, but Hawthorn are now thinking twice because of health concerns, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. I agree with Lauren here. Like, I know a few Hawthorn fans have messaged me and they're panicking. Sometimes I just want to see someone be a dickhead. I don't know what it is. It might be the Englishness in me, but you're getting him for next to nothing. Like, if you get rid of it. So I genuinely like it. Like, I used to scream on this show to Nick Austin to get rid of pick 6 when we had it for Chera, going, get 6, 16 and 20. Who cares? Who cares? Because then they can't ask for pick 6 when it's someone else. So maybe something has come up they've tried to decrease the value of the deal. And West Coast are being like, "Now we've already committed this pick. We've already committed it." And they've gone, "Okay, commit it now." Carlton have got it, which I find really interesting. Big Paul Hill donating 10 gifted. What a legend. If Paul has given you a membership, make sure you say nice work, Sparrow. But do you reckon, let's go yes or no in chat. I still think Barras gets there.
I think he gets there. But I think the deal's going to be very, very complicated.
Does anyone else feel like I want to put my conspiracy hat on, right? Does anyone else feel the AFL were like, shit? Lepich has confirmed that they're going hard for Houston. Carlton have got 2 first-rounders now, so they're in the mix if it is Houston. We can't drag this out anymore now because everyone's got Arsenal. We need another deal. And does anyone else feel that they've maybe just slid this one in to create a little bit of home and away-esque about it?
Well, I mean, there is, if I'll put on my tinfoil hat as well, and it does. There is the talk that the AFL holds deals back before it lodges it, just so that they have stuff for deadline day for all those radio and TV productions that have been signed on. So who knows? Maybe once all the deals are done come Wednesday night, it all makes sense. But for now, it looks like a massive bomb has been dropped.
You know what? I agree with Damien. I'm going to stand by it now. I will be live covering every trade pick. And I am guaranteeing 3 minutes before it closes, Damien has nailed it. Out of nowhere, they'll be like, oh my God, I'm just getting reports that there's a 3-way deal. A future second's being traded for something pointless. You just know it. Now, let's talk briefly, right, about this. And this leads us on to our next question. It came in today that Carlton, before signing off this deal, had a hard crack at pick 3. And it's still believed that Carlton are wanting to trade up. Now, I'm not saying that Mr. Austin watches this show, but my favourite player has been, no surprise, Sid Draper. He would be around pick 3, and he is a goal-kicking mid, which I'm in love with. But 14 and 12, it's worth noting, is probably very good on points. It's about plus 200. We've got to remember that 14 and 12 probably become 15 and 19, 15 and 17, with the matches providing Keiko goes after pick 9, which will be touch and go, which would then make it unders. Can we see this happening? Because I think Carlton have done this for a reason that isn't Dan Houston. That's my read.
I think all the clubs that want Houston are waiting for Houston to make up his mind about where the fuck he wants to go, because he needs to make up his mind so that clubs can actually make proper moves, because at the moment it's just moving shit around to just accommodate if that's where he chooses to go. And maybe he doesn't care where he goes, but it might be nice for the clubs involved to know how hard they need to negotiate so that he actually does have a destination at the end of the trade period. You mentioned that the picks could move down. That matching academy picks doesn't actually change the amount of live selections still on the board. If you've got pick 12 and it moves to pick 15, that doesn't mean that just means 3 players have had bids matched on them. Because like clubs were never going to get Levi Ashcroft. Clubs were never going to get Isaac Keiko. Like, it is still a live selection. It is still a high live selection. So just because it's moved down doesn't mean it's not valuable. It just means that bids have been matched ahead of it, and those academy guys are now off the board. So I don't think that would worry clubs too much. Going for pick 3, though, they must have someone in mind that they really, really want. If they're trying to get something up that high.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's fascinating because, like, I think in this occasion, what one pick that does worry me is just Essendon's 9. It's right in that purview of, do you have it? do you not have it? Do you know what I mean? Do you have... if that would be my reservation. I'm looking at it from West Coast point of view. If it's West Coast and you can guarantee pick 8 is Isaac Keiko killing Essendon's pick, right? So then 9 effectively just becomes they bid on Keiko. I do this pick. I just think when you're going down there, it's hard to target your player, isn't it? I just think with that bid being just before these picks, that would be the one thing I'd be wary about. And Carlton aren't in a good position to trade anything extra. Do you know what I mean? Trade anything like any sprinkles, because now they'd have to find another future, which they can't do because, well, I suppose they can, but it doesn't feel like that's as easy now. We've done it once.
Certainly going to be complicated if they do have to involve anything more than 12 and 14. Like future picks, they would have to get one back in to appease the AFL's rules. There's a bunch that's going to have to go on for a club like Carlton after the moves that they've made to move up the board now.
It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating. Big Red with the $1 donation. Good day to you, mate. Hey, I tell you what, I love the way that came red for you as well. I've never seen it come red. And unless I've imagined it, I've only ever seen it be like an obscure black. So that's pretty cool. I don't know how you did that. I agree. The gorgeous Narelle. Good day to you, my darling. Sid Draper over Traynor and Travelala. Could be Joe Barry. It could be interesting. I mean, who else do we think will go for pick 3? Eagles gave the shittest press conference today ever and said we've had offers for pick 3, which is about as surprising as saying that my 2 under 10s would take free ice cream. Do you know what I mean? Would this be, in my mock drafts, Jason asks as well where I'm alluding, Richmond have got a plethora of picks at the minute. They've got 20, 24, 51. They're going to get picks from you guys for Bolton. They're going to get picks from Gold Coast for Dan Rioli. I can see, if I was Richmond, I'd be wanting 1 and 3. I'd be doing everything to get this.
I mean, if they get 6 and 10, could they potentially trade that to North for pick 2 instead and have picks 1 and 2?
Mate, I mean, let's have a look. 2,500 on points, 6 and 10. It won't be far off. You know, that is a good deal. That's one of the deals. From memory, I think that was one of the suggestions I had, because it's 600 more on points. But, like, my argument is the top 3 is always 20% more premium. You are buying good picks. I mean, their ability to... Because I think Harvey Langford, I know Kautumi is obsessed with him, and I understand it. He's a great player, but if you can go Jagger Smith and Harvey Langford 1 and 2, you have really covered everything, haven't you? You've, like, taken the risk, but you haven't. But I agree with JD, it's a lot. But I also say the picks you'd have after that as well. You've still got a lot, haven't you? You've got 2 great players, but then you're right in the purview of key position players, and you kind of completed the draft, haven't you?
I mean, we might get to the end of the first round, and then Richmond pass in round 2. We could have the earliest pass in the draft ever, because it gets to pick 24 and Richmond have passed.
Well, I mean, it's going to be fascinating. And old mate, my mate Benny here, big laughing magpie. What do you think of Ben Allen's son?
Ed. I like Ed. I'm a little annoyed that he didn't qualify for father-son, but I don't think I don't know how interested the Dockers were in him in the first place. I know that they would have liked to have him for history's sake, but I don't know how interested they were of him in the first place, because Erasmus, Brodie, O'Driscoll, they're already not getting games. Allen would just add to that mix of guys that can't get games at the moment.
Well, I mean, it's It's always tough, isn't it? I mean, you don't fall in love with you don't fall in love with them players, do you, easily? Years down the track, it's very traditionalist, isn't it? But he's going well at Collingwood. But then we've got Gold Coast pick 13. So we have been informed. Well, when I say we've been informed, it makes it sound like I'm super important and they've just called me. The world has been informed that pick 13 is currently in a 4-way pick race. And this leads us on to all sorts of topics. Collingwood have offered Noble and a future first for 13 and 23. Dogs have evidently offered a future first straight up, which I think is really intriguing because that's like one of them risk rewards. If the Dogs bomb, could be a good deal. Sydney have evidently gone 19 and 22. And Melbourne have gone a future first and a second rounder. And it's their second rounder this year, which I think is quite interesting because that's pick 28. A lot of offers for him. Anyone else really excited that Sydney have done this?
Sydney don't usually chase picks unless they see someone they really, really like on the draft board. But the last time Sydney upgraded one of their picks, and I might be wrong in recalling this, but I'm pretty sure they ended up with Matthew Ling, who did absolutely fuck all for them. So they don't have a great history of upgrading their pick and picking the right player that they're trading up for.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like on face value, I'm always ominous when Sydney as well, like you, because they've got that reputation of drafting well, which I'll lie and say it's probably quite easy when you've got a massive academy. It kind of makes it look better when you go through that. But Melbourne's, everyone in chat, Lauren and JD, they're spot on. I think Melbourne's deal is better on paper, considering that 13's worthless to them. But I want to run this by you. 19 and 22 has huge on-sale potential, doesn't it? Like, huge, because Gold Coast ain't going to be having 19 and 22. So it's almost like Sydney have said, let us get up the draft. We're giving you more commodities to sell. So if Gold Coast have a sniff, hang about, 19 could maybe be used in, I don't know, the Dan Noble, the Noble deal or something like that as a make weight in a freeway trade. But 9 and 22, I reckon they'd get even more offers for teams to go slightly up the board. So it could be one of them like little sneaky deals where I'd be looking at the Sydney deal. I'd be looking at 19 and 22 thinking, can I get maybe 3 picks in the 30s, cover the Lombardo deal, and go straight into next year's draft with 2 picks?
Yeah, the Suns have a lot to think about because they've gotten some really good offers on the board, and Craig Cameron even said that he has no idea which way they're going to go because all the offers that they've been getting have given them something to think about, and we probably won't know what they're going to go with until, maybe until like Wednesday, 3:00 next week.
Could people out there, could this be a deal that Hawthorn look at? Like Hawthorn, like you look there, the Melbourne deal's a future first and a future second, and future first and 28. Could this be a deal that Hawthorn have just been maybe quietly stewing away and going, we'll give 33 a future first and doing it that way?
But is Hawthorn's offer better than Melbourne's offer? No. So why?
No, what I mean is, if they went with Sydney's, could they look then maybe of on trading this to Sydney and going Hawthorn and going, right, we've got 18 and 19. You give us 33 this year and a future first. You get 19 and 22, and then they offer them as effective 2 first to Barras.
It's 2 first rounders. The Eagles can't complain.
Because you know what it's like? A future first is imaginary, isn't it? Like I always say this, future first is imaginary. You don't know what it is. So if you convert that, because at the moment you'd imagine Hawthorn are going to try and do a Carlton, future first, future second, Tom Barras. Could they go that way and go, tell you what, we'll do you a solid now. We'll give you the picks we've just got from Gold Coast. It helps Gold Coast out because they get 563 points and they've traded even more down, so they're not wasting it. Couldn't that be the way? Could that be the way of saying we can give you a hypothetical future first, or we can give you 2 today?
Yeah, well, when people trade future first, I don't automatically think pick 5, pick 10. In my mind, I go at worst pick 18, or that's pretty safe to say 18 if everyone only picks once and there's no academy bid. So a future second is pick 36. A future third is pick 54. Like that I don't consider a future first a real item until we see what the ladder looks like. So if West Coast are wanting 2 first round picks, and Hawthorn do fly up the ladder next year, that could be pick 18 and 19. Whereas if they get 19 and 22 now, they know the exact quantity of what they've traded in.
Well, it's an interesting one, because where's everyone stand? I'm quite bullish on Hawks. But Hawks are in that awkward position, aren't they, where they're future first. Can they back it up? So if you were like the Eagles, it's a real great conundrum, isn't it? Because Hawthorn could go up another level, be top 4. There's no doubt about it. But there's also a part of you that also thinks they've come from nowhere, effectively. Could they slide back? Is it a year too soon? And then they're going to have a tougher draw. People aren't going to be surprised. Could there be an inkling in Eagles' mind of going, maybe they finish 12th, which then is probably a pretty good deal because it's pick 6, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like Freo made the finals in 2021 and it was probably seen as ahead of schedule. And then the years that they were supposed to back that up, they couldn't because they had a harder fixture. They also lost a few key players in the off seasons. But now they've probably got their list back into a position where they can then make a run, and they've secured all of their big names. They've secured all of that. Whereas Hawthorn haven't had that exodus of players leave. And yes, they're going to get a harder fixture, but they've shown that they can stand up against teams in the final and towards the back end of the season, that their game plan, Sam Mitchell's plan in games, does stand up against the best of the best. So, yeah, they might have a harder start or a harder season, but that doesn't mean they can't make finals, and that doesn't mean that they can't win and shoot up the ladder. So I think, like you say, future picks are imaginary until the ladder is set in stone. And it's just hard to make those sort of predictions until the season begins or until the season is underway. And I mean, list managers will have inklings of where clubs will finish and all of that sort of thing. But it is difficult. It is difficult to sort of sell future picks as much as it is difficult to be confident in buying future picks at the same time.
Yeah, you see, I mean, I think they'll be about where they are now. Do you know what I mean? I think they'll be about where they are now, but it'd be interesting to see Eagles. This is a great one here for Spinkscapes as well before we move on. Obviously, it's advantage Eagles. Do we have any indication why Barras wants to leave? Is it for opportunity? Has he indicated he'd be happy to stay?
I know that middle of the year he said he'd only leave if he was told that it was going to be to the benefit of West Coast. But there's no inkling that West Coast actually want him to leave. He's just said, yeah, let's get to Hawks. I'm getting to the end of my career. I'm not in West Coast next premiership side, basically, is what he's saying. So I don't think the doors ever closed on him going back, but it feels like they've potentially gone too far down the road on this now for him to walk back through the doors at Lathlane to,
It does feel like Barras is a bit like Bryce Gibbs, though. Like every year we talk about him leaving, which I always always think, even though he might like the club, there's obviously a pull. Like Damien saying he believes it's to be closer to his sister. Like it's one of them ones that you just think, we've heard this before from Tom Barrassi's camp, but it's like, I agree with Spinkscapes. They're not in the position to do a generosity. Like, if I'm Eagles, I want compensating. Like, I'm wanting compensating. And it's an interesting one because I actually think that Sydney suggestion we've just said, if they could acquire 19 and 22, I think that's a good deal for the Eagles because I feel like Eagles need volume of quality, but it's an interesting one because it's not a quick fix, is it, for Eagles? Like, you'll love talking about this because you're a Freo man. You don't want a quick fix, do you, Damo?
I mean, I do and I don't, because when the Eagles aren't profiting from seasons, they are down the bottom of the ladder. It actually hurts all levels of football around WA, and it actually hurts with funding and selling the product to get sponsors and grants and all those sort of things through the door. So ideally, we would like West Coast to make a jump next season, but a slower jump would be nice.
He's worded that so articulately. I'm impressed. But I mean, Lepic gave an interview today, and I don't know about anyone else, but when you were hearing Lepic talk, I was thinking he is all over the place here. Like, he's like, there was way too much words right from him. Do you know what I mean? Just too many words for me. But I'm going to ask this: is the Dan Houston deal in limbo? And are we still confident it's Collingwood?
I'm not even confident that he leaves anymore. It feels like all of that Gold Coast, Port Adelaide, Carlton, Collingwood, that whole situation with Noble, with Houston, with Lacocious, with Richards, it's all a big bloody mess. And like at the end of Wednesday, it probably all makes sense, all these deals that have gone down and all these offers and everything that's being thrown left, right, and center like we're in a fucking monkeys exhibit at the zoo. But it's probably all going to make sense by the end of Wednesday. But at the moment, I just have no idea. No idea.
I was on a Pies podcast the other day, and I said that the only way I think Collingwood can fuck this up, right, is if they do a Stephen Silvani and they ask for too much. They ask for too much, or they have to win the deal. Do you know what I mean? Like and then there was this sticking point in that they want pick 23 back for some reason, right? And it just feels as simple that if Collingwood offered, here's our future first, here's Noble, give us 13. It feels like Gold Coast would just say, okay, here you are, right? It feels like they're fighting over that, right? And I did say it on the Collingwood podcast. Until it's signed, it's always someone else's. Do you know what I mean? It's always someone else's. And it does feel like they've just pushed it too much, isn't there? They've pushed it too much, and it's going to be very interesting what happens, isn't it? Like, from here, because if they mess it up, I'm telling you, Lepic has cooked that. Like, absolutely cooked that.
I reckon Collingwood are unhappy with how Freo managed to get a future first out of them for Lockie Schultz, and now they're trying to do the same thing back the other way in a different deal. Because you'd say that Noble and Schultz are probably very similar players in terms of their stature and where they fit into both of those clubs at the time that they got traded. So I reckon Collingwood are kind of like, how Freo pulled this off. We have to try and pull this off somewhere else now.
It's fascinating. It's interesting as well, isn't it? Because you know what? I've got to fully commend Dan Houston as well, because it's the first time for a long time that some guys said, I want to come home for family reasons and look at, and, be closer to everyone. And he hasn't specified a small suburb in that state. He seems actually genuine here and saying, I want to come to Victoria. Like, he probably has preferences, and I don't buy into the nonsense of like, oh, he's mates with Jack Silvani, because he's a full-grown man. Like full-grown men don't think like that, right? And he's also close with Darcy Moore. We know he's close with JDG. And then, like, there's Melbourne there, and I find Melbourne a really, really interesting prospect here, because we talked about them with pick 13. Wouldn't it be funny if Melbourne came from the clouds? Like, if Melbourne came from the clouds, Gold Coast said, right, that is a fantastic deal. You're not asking for anything in return. Second and a first, that's what we want. Bang, here it is. And then Melbourne came from the clouds. Obviously, I think Melbourne's probably the least attractive of them, other than North, purely because North are at the bottom rungs of the ladder. I genuinely think if I was a player, though, I'd want to go and play for North. Like, to be honest.
North are a sneaky chance to have a quick little jump this in 2025. Actually, they were putting together some really, really good form. They couldn't just they couldn't close out games, which felt more of a fitness issue than anything else. So, and they're going to add in more top talent. They're going to get in Luke Parker. They've just got in Jack Darling, another target in the forward line, which I watched one of their games later in the year. They had no issue getting the ball past halfway. It was finding someone to kick to actually keep the ball down that end of the ground. So having Jack Darling there will solve part of that issue. Luke Parker will probably solve a bit of that issue because he's very, very adept in the forward line. He also presents a good marking target, a smart player in that forward half. So we could see North rise faster than people think. And I don't think it's as dire as it looked in the first half of last season. So, yeah, they're a club where you'd have to see it to want to go there. But I think once you do see it, they do become quite an attractive club just to someone looking to build and become part of something that's special.
Mate, it's going to be interesting. Like, I know North aren't a glamour club, right? But like, I think it has more pull working with Clarkson, an iconic football coach, than it does Jack Silvani's your boyhood mate. Like maybe I'm built different, but if I had an opportunity to go and work for someone who's an icon in the industry, or go and work with one of my pals, I can still go to the pub after work with me pals. I'm not going to get the opportunity to work with a legend. Do you know what I mean? So I think that goes well. And I agree with you. When I look at North, I think the big thing they lacked was a little bit of chutzpah, a little bit of fight. So I think the Parker acquisition, when it finally comes through, Darling standard setter, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Like, I like this. I like this. I do like
for
it.
Sure. Experience through the door, calm heads on game day, standard setters on the training field, a bit of experience in the locker room. It's all going to be very useful to them when, in 5 years' time, they're potentially a top 8 or a top 4 team.
I agree. And you know what? I love this from Sean. He's a Hawthorn man. That's why I was a big fan of you trading out that pick, because I felt like West Coast were just taking the piss and dragging it out. Like, I want more clubs to go, you know what? Here's the offer. Get fucked. We'll just trade it to someone else. And now you've got a problem, haven't you? So I'm happy with that. And then I wanted to talk about this one because I don't know what GWS are doing. And here's Pom's bold call. I think GWS are in a bucket load of trouble. A bucket load of trouble. And the reason I say that is Dylan Shield going back in time and then Jake Stringer. I get the feeling that GWS have changed their tact because of how they've disappointingly gone out of the last couple of final series. It feels like they're trying to force the je ne sais quoi. And the only one I like here is Stringer, right? I do like Stringer because I feel like it really opens up Cadman. I think Cadman's a quality player, but the Dylan Shield, I've had a few GWS guys try and word it to me going, ooh, speed from stoppage. And I'm like, if it was 2019, I'd agree with you, but it's 2024. Man United need a goal scorer. I'm not saying bring George Best back. Do you know what I mean? Like, this one feels weird. Does anyone else feel like it's really weird?
I just don't know where Stringer or Shield fit, to be honest. Like, yes, they are losing. They're losing James Peatling. They've lost Isaac Cumming. They've lost Harry Perryman, but they've got blokes that they've drafted high in the draft, completely tearing up the VFL that are probably going to do the job just fine. And Jack Stringer's what, 30, almost 31. Essendon seemingly don't want him back. So is he the best thing for your culture to bring in a guy like that? And yeah, I know Sam Edmund reckons it's only going to cost pick 56, but the Giants drafted James Leake last year. They also drafted Phoenix Gothard. Those guys will need to get opportunities soon, or they'll be out the door next. Josh Fay's another one that has a great VFL pedigree, but can't seem to break into the team. They've said how much they love Connor Stone, and now they're going after Jake Stringer, who's essentially Connor Stone, but in 10 years' time. Unless Jake Stringer is willing to just be a kind of background actor at that club, it doesn't make sense. Dylan Shield kind of makes sense for what they're losing out of their midfield, but they've got guys that they can bring in from their VFL program. Like, they would have never known that Peatling was this good or this valuable if they had never given him the midfield time. Why not give the midfield time to a James Leake or a Josh Fay or a Jacob Ware or someone like that? Why do you need to go after these 30-plus-year-olds who aren't going to add anything to your team structure?
Mate, I think you've summed it up. Like, I feel like when I look at their list, and look, Koken knows me too well. Honestly, I'm gonna reveal it. I just can't. Look, I was abused once by a GWS fan, right? And it hard. But there's a bit more to it than that. I can't. Do you remember when Leicester won the Premier League and you had all these dickheads going, "Oh, I don't mind Leicester winning the Premier League." I fucking didn't like it because I don't like anyone winning but my team. Like, and then it's always like, "Oh, GWS are my second team. Oh, go the Giants. Oh, their song's good. Oh, Kingsley's good." Fuck Kingsley. Fuck them. Like, you can't have a second team. I refuse it for a start. You can't mind someone else winning, right? It should always bother you. Collingwood winning the flag bothers me as much as Brisbane winning the flag because it's not me, all right? So call it a selfish attitude, but everyone feels like they like them. So I don't like them. Fuck them. You know what I mean? But no, back to the GWS. I agree with you. I just look at their list and, like, Jake Stringer I can kind of understand, right? Because I think
can't.
he is. No, but
No,
I can kind of understand it purely because I feel like it helps Cadman in a way, right? But the Dylan Shield one, keep Peatling, keep Xavier O'Halloran. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather put time into them than bring him in for like 24 hours effectively.
Yeah, I mean, like, Xavier Haller is not, like, I completely forgot to mention him, but he's another one that they want to hold on to because they reckon that the opportunity is going to arise for him next year. Well, if you bring in Dylan Shield, where's the opportunity going to go? Is the opportunity in their VFL team? Is it on the training track? Is it in the lunchroom? Is he going to be serving sandwiches to them at halftime? Like, where's the opportunity going to come for these younger guys that they so clearly want to hold on to and are sick of having to trade out because they're requesting trades? Give these guys the opportunities. If you feel like you need to go backwards to go forwards, then do it. Don't try and hang on to something just because and trade in players just because. And I mean, like, we've seen it work. Like, we've seen it work with the Giants. They drafted Matt DeBoer. After he was delisted, so it can work. They can turn players around in the back end of their careers, but I just don't think the strategy's there anymore for them. I think they've got enough of those players in that age range. They now need to start showing these young guys that they've drafted high, that they've held on to, that they refused trade requests from, that, yes, you have a spot in this team. Isaac Cummings gone out the door. Here you go. Here's your chance. Harry Perryman's gone out the door. Here you go. Here's your chance. You know, like, they've held Connor Stone. They've refused him but getting traded. They've signed him to 2 years, and now they're going for Jake Stringer, who's who is basically Connor Stone. Like, just give Connor Stone that chance. Don't bring in Stringer and take that chance away from a guy that you've just refused a trade request from. Actually use him. You've signed him for 2 years. See what he can do for 2 years. Don't sell these players down, into fucking Candyland when there's nothing there.
I think you're right. I mean, I agree with Petra here. It is a common tactic, but I'd counter that. Like, Jesse Hogan's 30 next year. So's Josh Kelly, Whitfield, Toby Green, Cornelio. Like, these guys have been there and done it, haven't they? Like, and I wouldn't say Stringer's like, when I think of over 30s, like, you mentioned Bradley and stuff. I'm thinking like over 30 leaders. Like, Stringer and Shield don't really strike me as like a Gibson or a Hodge. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't feel like they're going to bring in that standard setter. I feel like Stringer's like a Jesse Hogan for them. Like, let's just hope a change of scenery brings back his best. And 53 is fuck all. But, like, for me, 53, I'd want both of them. Is that too much? Like, to ask? But if I was giving Essendon, I'd say 53, Stringer and Chill. Give me it now.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know.
Sorry, Essendon fans.
I think Dylan Shield offers more in terms of leadership than Jake Stringer does. I think they're hoping that they can that they can do what they did with Hogan for a second time. And I genuinely think that if Hogan wasn't hounded by the media 24/7 when he was in WA, because he was essentially that time's version of Harley Reid for Fremantle, because it was finally a big fish. Fremantle finally landed a big fish, so the West Australian couldn't leave him the fuck alone. I genuinely believe if this state was less of a fishbowl and he could walk down the street without being photographed for who knows what, then I reckon that the Dockers might be benefiting from this now. So I don't think that the Hogan one was as far-fetched as the Stringer one appears to be on the surface based on what's being reported. But we don't really know what's going on with Drake Stringer. We've just heard that clubs have done their due diligence and weren't happy with what the situation was looking like.
I agree. I mean, I like this from Shane. Like, I can see Stringer working, but it's at that pick, 53. I think 53, it's a risk-free, but like the Dylan Shield one it blags my head because I look at their midfield, they've got depth. Like, they've got depth all around the park. Like, I'd want him as the state knives, maybe for me. I just think when you've got 15, 16, 21, you can draft the backup, but that's just me. We move on to this is probably the best story. And I like this story because Michelle Oliver, shout out to her. Clayton Oliver's mum, she's been pot-shotting journalists. You know what? It reminds me of my dear late Nana. She would have pot-shotted people who were pot-shotting me. But Clayton Oliver has evidently, and I'm going to say this loosely because I don't want his mum coming after me, has packed up his things. He's told Melbourne, get fucked. This is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because if they get 13 in, let's just say Melbourne get 13 in. I think Melbourne, when I look at Melbourne, I think they've got a bit of midfield coverage. They can start putting some time into the young kids. Do you know what I mean? I think the young kids can bear the load. I think they've got Viney and Petrarca. I do feel like Petrarca I think they look better with Petrarca solo than they do with Oliver being on the ball and Petrarca forward. I think Petrarca's there. It's going to be interesting how it works with his injuries, though. But do we think, one, Clayton Oliver's going to go there? And do we think it's as simple as they've been trialling Salem in the midfield, that they just bring Dan Houston in? They just bring Dan Houston because Oliver's pay cut, evidently he looks signed, sealed and delivered. It's just getting the pick. Do we think we do it? Do you think Melbourne sell Clayton Oliver? And do you think they get Dan Houston if they sell him?
Well, If you believe Brad Green on Twitter, Clayton Oliver's going nowhere, and Brad Green's the president of the club at the moment. But when it involves Geelong, you never say never. But Geelong are caught in a logjam trying to get Bailey Smith through the door as well. And I just don't know how they can get both, given what Melbourne will want for Oliver and what the Bulldogs are wanting for Bailey Smith. But if Oliver does go, then could Melbourne be the club that finds themselves in the mix for like a Dev Robertson or something along those lines? Because you've said they've got a lot of depth that they can develop, but to me, I think it leaves them very thin, especially if Petrarca isn't the same player when he returns after his King's birthday injury. Because he said that he's going to have to talk to psychologists, get training, all that sort of thing to put himself in that mindset again, to put his body on the line. So he might not want to go back into the midfield. He might find himself back across half forward, where he impacted early in his career. And it's going to see that Melbourne midfield look a lot different if there's no Oliver, because he's gone elsewhere and Petrarca's not the same player again. And we should also mention that Harry Sharp has requested a trade to Melbourne as well. So that's two Brisbane players. So Dev Robertson potentially also going there. So we might see both of those players head to Melbourne if Oliver leaves. Dev to directly replace Oliver, and Harry Sharp adding a bit of depth on the outside, replacing Lockie Hunter.
I agree with you. I mean, the Petrarca one is hard to say, right? If he does, but let's just say, I've been thinking about it. You know that deal, pick 13, right? Pick 13. They were going to offer a future first. What if Geelong offered a future first to Melbourne for Oliver? They said that there was going to be a bit of a salary cap dump. So that lowers Oliver's value a little bit if there's a salary cap dump, right? Would we say that if they accepted the future first and say reduce the salary cap dump quite a bit, so they said, okay, cool, we're not going to give you too much money. We'll pay 200 as opposed to, I think it was 450 was the report why they wanted a first. Let's just say Geelong gave them a future first, which is probably unders, but I think Oliver's quite a risk. And then they traded that future first with the second to get Mr. Pick 13. They'd have 5 and 13 at this draft. It's not a bad time to lose Oliver then. Keep Petrarca there in the forward line. Sharp comes in, who I think is a decent outside mid. Wade Dirksen comes in, which I think is a good little benefit. But I think here that they've got some options there. Thank you very much, Mrs. P. Because 5 and 13, you could get Josh Smiley in, who's slid, who's like the Cripper Audi clone. Very loose, but you've still got Viney there running it. I think Smiley would really learn off Viney. They're not paying too much of the salary because they've reduced their asking price, which helps Melbourne. But 5 and 13 and 28 in this draft, 5 and 13 in this draft, I think is a huge win. Like, I think Melbourne could really replace it because I don't think their list is as bad as people are saying it is. I just think the culture's a bit shit at the minute.
Yeah, but I think culture plays a big part in how your list comes together. But no, their list isn't in a bad spot. They've got a young forward line. They probably do need someone to come up behind May and Lever to give their back line something a little bit to be excited about. But Melbourne aren't in a bad spot. It's just if they lose Oliver, if Petrarca doesn't come back the same player, having 5 and 13 will give their list a bit of rejuvenation, but they also need something in the meantime to keep them afloat. So Melbourne's another club that might have to go down to come up, or they might surprise everyone and show that Oliver and leaving, Petrarca changing roles was the best thing for the club in the first place. It's so hard because we've seen Melbourne cover Petrarca's loss and Oliver's absence throughout different stages of the last couple of years, and they've done it so well. It's just a matter of if they can cover both at once and who stands up for them, because they tried Trent Rivers there late in the year and he seemed pretty good at playing in the midfield, and maybe Trent Rivers turns out to be the answer for losing Clayton Oliver, and they're just fine anyway.
Would this be the deal? Walshy and Matt Gandolfo, if Oliver went, do you think, because Carlton confirmed no one's matched Kennedy's requested midfield time, and he said he wants to stay at Carlton, he was only pursuing it if he could get midfield. There's a Clayton Oliver-sized hole, and I would say if you were looking for Audi Clayton Oliver, Matt Kennedy is your man. Would that buy you a bit of time then? So then you could go pick 5 Josh Smiley, or you could go and pair that up with maybe a Harry Armstrong or maybe an Alex Tyru or someone like that. You were talking about their young, needing some youth in the back line. But you get Kennedy there. He's 28 years old, prime of his life, played an awful lot of football games. Him and Viney takes the pressure off Petrarca, allows Trent Rivers to play in there in spurts, keep him fresh. It's a good little backup plan, isn't it? Because you could offer him inside minutes.
Yeah, so like Matt Kennedy should be fairly. Would you say that Matt Kennedy would be fairly cheap to acquire? I reckon Dev Robertson would be fairly cheap to acquire. So one of those guys could potentially be what holds them over, and then who knows from there.
No, I agree. No, Trav, mate, I've been bigging you guys up today. I did say Audi, Oliver. Audi. To explain that in English, Audi, you're quite frowned upon if you shop at Audi. I used to shop at Audi, but it's Iceland and Audi in the UK. If you shop there, people judge you. Question from Jay Baggers. Mrs. P is a keeper. It's why she's put up with me for 11 years. Bit of Gollard about Toby Travalaia. Did he play any midfield time? He did. He didn't mind a bit of wing minutes either. He did. Shane, this is an interesting one. Fremantle, I've got you here, Demo. This looked like a lot, Keziah Pickett. Whatever happened to
that? It's Melbourne have shut everything down. Like any link to any club, Melbourne have shut down. But I've also noticed that David Walls has said players in almost every interview he's done. So not just player, not just a singular player. So did he know that Hawks were going to trade pick 14 and he always knew that Liam Baker could potentially be on? Or maybe it's like the Oliver deal and the Pickett deal has never quite shut down, because Pickett did approach the Dockers. The Dockers didn't approach Pickett, but maybe the Dockers have kind of gone, if we can get Bolton and Pickett and keep the Pickett deal on the down low, despite everything that Melbourne is saying, hey, who knows? A man can dream. A man can dream.
And before we move on to the final subject, I've got to tell you this. What do you think is the deal? Because we've heard Richmond have gone real Robin Hood at the minute. They are like literally fucking Robin Hood at the minute. The rumours are pick 11 and 18 is their asking price for Bolton.
I'd give that.
Like, so, Shy Bolton, would you give up Bo Allen and use pick 10 and a future first? Because I'd imagine it'd be 10 and a future first, wouldn't it? Keziah Pickett, if you valued Bolton that. Like, Bolton and Pickett, I agree with JD. That's football, isn't it?
So... Freo will be of the stance of, we haven't chased Pickett. Pickett has chased us. So Pickett has to convince Melbourne that what the Dockers offer is fair. Dockers don't want to move any picks out of next year's draft because of what could potentially be through the door in 12 months' time. So if they're left with pick 10 or pick 11, it's up to Pickett and Pickett's management to convince Melbourne that pick 11 is enough, or whatever it turns out to be.
You see, it doesn't happen in AFL, but if I was Melbourne and you've paid pick 11 and 18 for Shy Bolton, I want 10 and a first. Like, that's just how I'd work, because I'd be like, Pickett, Bolton's great, but so is Pickett. Like, that's how I'd work. I'd be busting your ass. Maybe I'd be nice, because it's you, Damo, in this hypothetical, and you're the list manager. I'd maybe accept a future second
But at the top of the show, you said you'd love if clubs could just hate each other and ruin their lives.
Yeah.
I don't think Fremantle and Melbourne have a good working relationship on the trade desk. We've seen them bicker over the Hogan deal, over the Langdon deal, over the Luke Jackson deal. That Fremantle froze Melbourne out of the Adam Cherry negotiations because they didn't want to deal with them. Because Melbourne were offering silly, didn't even come in with a strong starting offer for Dockers to even begin negotiations with them at all. I think if there's two teams that hate each other at the trade table, it is Fremantle and Melbourne, all because of their history. Because it dates back to the Mitch Clark days.
I suppose it's fair. You have had. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but I actually thought you looked after them in the Jackson deal. I remember reviewing that 13, a future first and a future second for 44 and 67. I mean, I think Luke Jackson's great, but I think you paid a little bit more on potential than some other clubs would. Like Geelong, Shane's here. What I love about Geelong is they don't buy potential. Like, they're like fucking potential's Scotch mist. It's not real. They pay on actual what you do. I always thought that deal there was pretty fair from you guys. I thought you guys were pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think in the end, the Dockers were like, just give them what they want so we can fucking leave.
I tell you what, I'm going to call it now. If you get Pickett and Shai Bolton, box office football. Office.
A forward line of Tracy, Frederick, Sturt, Amos, Pickett, and Bolton. That would be price of admission alone worth it.
Yeah, and Fremantle fans are going to go like to my mid-season rap when I said Fremantle play the boringest style of fucking football ever. I'd rather watch paint dry. And when I'm raving about them next year, they're going to be like, oh, you said this last year. And I'm going to be like, yeah, but you had Matt Taberner forward. Do you know what I mean? Got some good players now. I have allowed to change my mind. But we do finish talking about forwards. We talk about Jacob Constante. We've talked about him a lot up and down on Pominos. We are personally invested in this, though, because he was one of my favourite players from his draft class. And he used to play for Gibson Power, and I always have a soft spot for them. But a guy that has struggled to get into Sydney's lineup, and he's forming the VFL towards the middle part of the year, was very impressive, averaging nearly 5 tackles, which is very impressive as well. If you're looking for a pressure forward that can kick goals, Jacob probably hasn't got the chance, and I think he's one of them players that retains a bit of value because of the people who he can't get in above. Constante's evidently met with North Melbourne, St Kilda and Essendon, but almost more importantly, the Blue Boys are being linked with him as well. Jacob Constante, rumours are they will do a trade or delist him. I reckon that this is going to be one of them future fourths. Please don't delist him, because North are the only team that don't have to trade for him. They have pick one in the PSD. Well, Eagles do and Richmond do, but I'd imagine they'll fill their list. They've probably got the advantage in this scenario, North Melbourne, but could this be a 4th round deal where you just try and say, please don't delist him, we'll get him?
Yeah, I was going to say a club might offer something just so he doesn't have to go into the market and go into the draft. So, yeah, the club most desperate for him, or the club most interested in him, might offer a future 4th or a 4th round pick, or even a 3rd round pick, just to get it done.
I'm a big fan of this. Like, I'll tell you right now, call me crazy. My issue with Matty O is he plays like a third tall. He's built like a small forward. And I feel like Carlton are trying to manufacture. We kind of want Fogarty, but we'd love it if he kicked goals. We're trying to convert Durden into that. And we've tried to convert Jesse Motlop when he has played into that hybrid, when I think he just needs to be in front and centre. I like this pickup for Carlton. Like, genuinely, out of all the teams, this is me being unbiased, but I think St Kilda small forwards, he's got the same issue. If I'm Jacob Constante, still got to get past people. at North Melbourne, I'll play, but do I want to? I feel like Carlton's a super attractive offer, and Essendon. They're the two places, if I was his agent, I'd be saying, your quid's in here. Like, you've got a chance. Like Chill said, William Setterfield style deal, I think this is risk-free. Like, risk-free. And
Yeah.
Like, this is a money for jam deal.
Yeah, I really like Jacobs Casanti in his draft here, and I think that if he's on the move, any club that gets him is still basically getting the same as what clubs got during the draft year. And just the fact that he's got 12 months or 2 years or whatever it is at an AFL club in an AFL environment, in a high-level AFL environment, just makes his value pretty much remain or stick to where it is. And Essendon, yep, they're probably a good landing place for him. But I mean, they've got Gresham. They're about to draft Isaac Kako. They've got Perkins. They've got Hobbs and Shardis, who they want to give opportunities to. So where does Costanti fit in all of that? And then Carlton, you guys have the likes of Motlop and Durden and all of those, and even Ashton Moyer and all that as well. So I guess he just got to. I guess he'll go to the club where he feels he has the most opportunity. But if there's a club that comes after him and says, "Hey, we'll even trade for you to make it a bit less uncertain," then I reckon that's going to be the deal that gets done.
You know what? I know Kai's here. G'day, mate. How you doing? Kai doesn't like him up at Sydney. I haven't minded him in VFL. He just looks like a kid who's lost. And I agree with Shane. Like, I think good clubs. My favourite Carlton deal personally has been Elijah Hollands. I thought it cost fuck all. If you're wrong, you're wrong. I can see this being a deal for like pick 73. Like, you're going to delist him. We've got one too many picks for list spots. You have 73. You burn the twat. We take him. We take a risk for you because Carlton, it's a lateral deal. It's a lateral deal. Like I at the moment here talking about Geelong. I can't commend Geelong. I'm not going to be one of these guys who says you do dodgy deals with Cotton on. But like Jack Stevens, Mitch Clark, I didn't mind them punts because they're mature players. And Tanner Braun, I always stand by this. I think it's the stupidest trade out ever. I thought he was good. I just feel like Constanti for 2 years, knowing Motlop and Durden are out of contract next year, gives you a little bit of coverage because Zonk still here. Yeah, but you got to remember these guys are Gresham. Like, that's Gresham. You've got RNGAs that they can't be. They might not be good, mate. Like, I'm telling you, they're not in the top 60 of talents at the minute. So you can't bank on that. Like, I think it's a good deal, man. I think it's risk-free. I like risk-free. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win the Coleman, but I'm saying he could be quite good.
Building depth with AFL quality players is important, and he fits that.
I get Tyson. I get Tyson Stengel vibes. I just think he's unhappy. Like, I remember doing his profile during the juniors, and he's very close, like with his family and stuff. He's in Sydney, young kid, a little bit upset, away from home. Bring him back, give him a cuddle. He sees his Uncle Pom at training. Uncle Pom gives him a rub on the head and tells him everything's going to be... I am wearing pyjama pants. I've got little Yoda. Look. Grogu. Look. You don't often see my legs. New camera angle. But that is all we've got time for. Mr. Damo, you've got loads on. Podcasts. I'm sure you've been doing some excellent podcasts. What did you do yesterday for the podcast, just out of interest?
So at the Footy Mailbag, we're doing a Moving Parts podcast, which is a trade period companion, and we give it a bit of a Supercoach tinge. So, like, how does each move affect Supercoach for next year? And our good mate Lecdog gave me the idea of doing a addition by subtraction episode. So we talked about how the players affect the clubs where they've gone, but we didn't talk about what that leaves at the clubs where they've left, and that's the episode that we did yesterday there.
Mate, I love a little bit of how when we have, it's really hard off season for people to understand. Content creators, it's quite hard because you've got to like think on your feet. And when the AFL does fuck all, it's even harder to come up with something. So I actually commend you because sometimes you've just got to make some content out of thin air and be like, I hope these people don't know. I had no fucking idea what to do. So well done. There is the link. Go and see Damo. Go and say Pommy sent you. Give him some support. Everyone, have yourself a very wonderful weekend. I'm redrafting the 2021 draft tomorrow for your videos, so that's going to be a bit fun. Player profiles. Loads of you have asked me about the draft. I'll start that when the trade period finishes. So I've got like you've got 150 player profiles to get through. So they'll be staggered 5 a day or something like that. So you've got loads of content. Everyone look after yourself. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much for watching. See you. Bye.